Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. My name is Rob, and I will be your driver and tour guide for your Aquila City tour today. The tour will take approximately 10 minutes, ending at historic Victoria's downtown Inner Harbor, just a few steps from historic downtown. How's the temperature? Can everybody hear me? If I need to adjust either of these things, please let me know, as I want to make your tour as comfortable as possible. Just a couple of housekeeping points to mention before we begin. This coach is equipped with seat belts for your safety, and you are encouraged to use them. For your convenience, there is a restroom at the back of the bus. Please remain seated while the coach is in motion. Officially, I'd like to once again welcome you to Victoria, British Columbia, also known as the Garden City. And that's typically because of our mild climate year-round. People are able to grow flower and garden beds year-round. Of course, those funny-looking droplets you see falling out of the sky, here in Victoria, we refer to that as liquid sunshine. Now, to begin our tour, we start at Ogden Point, the area where your cruise ship pulled in today. Ogden Point was built in 1900 in anticipation of the completion of the Panama Canal. The intent was to make Victoria a deep port destination for the shipping industry. It is named after Peter Skeen Ogden, who was a prominent trader and explorer for the Hudson's Bay Company. Now, for those of you who are unaware, the Hudson's Bay Company originally formed out of the British fur trade in the mid-1600s. The fur trade began along the St. Lawrence in Quebec and eventually moved all the way out west to what we now know as Vancouver Island. Now, of course, Ogden Point sits along the Straits of Juan de Fuca. Now, wintertime is subject to some violent storms. So they needed a way to protect the ships in harbor, and in 1917, they completed the half-mile breakwater that you saw when your ship pulled in. Now, as we make our way out to Dallas Road, I'd like to mention that Dallas Road is home to Mile Zero. Mile Zero marks the beginning or the end of the longest national paved highway anywhere in the world, and that is the Trans-Canada Highway. It stems 5,000 miles across our country, starting in Victoria, British Columbia, and ending in St. John's, Newfoundland, on the east coast of Canada. Now, as we drive along Dallas Road, I'd like to talk a little bit about our Canadian Coast Guard. And that will be coming up on the driver's side of the coach. Now, unlike our American neighbors to the south, our Coast Guard is not a branch of the military, it's its own entity. Primarily, they focus on safety on the seas, search and rescue, and ice breaking up in the high Arctic. Now, with that being said, Victoria is home to Canada's Pacific Naval Fleet. And if you continue looking on the driver's side of the coach, you'll note a funny looking building. Well, that building kind of looks like a ship. Well, that is Her Majesty's Canadian ship Malahat, aka the Stone Frigate. Now, that building is home to our Naval Reserve Unit here in Victoria. Now, primarily, they man our marine coastal defense vessels, and they augment our Reg Force personnel as required. Continuing on the driver's side of the coach, you will see Fisherman's Wharf Park, and beyond that, Fisherman's Wharf. Fisherman's Wharf had its heyday from the end of the Second World War to the mid-1990s. Fishing vessels were tied up non-stop, unloading their fresh catch of the day. Of course, it is also home to 2 transient docks, and due to the transient nature of the fishing community, police were often called in to restore peace and order to the community. Now, it's not like that today. It's a much more peaceful place to be. It's home to various float homes, floating restaurants, including the world-famous Barb's Fish and Chips. Now, the community that we're driving through right now is called James Bay. James Bay is named after Sir James Douglas, who was the second governor to the colony of Vancouver Island. Primarily, this was farmland for the Hudson's Bay Company. However, the gold rush of 1858 saw a population boom. Our population rose from 500 to 30,000 seemingly overnight. As a result, they hit a bit of a building boom. Now, as you drive along James Bay, you'll notice that no 2 homes are exactly alike, unlike much of the cookie cutter developments you find in most of North America today. Now, as you drive down Superior Street, I like to draw your attention to the Japanese cherry trees, cherry blossoms, on the driver and door side of the coach. These trees are not native to Vancouver Island. They were a gift from the Japanese community in 1937. That year, they won first place in the local Victoria Day Parade. Now, instead of keeping the substantial $1,000 winnings to themselves, they regifted that back to the community in the form of these trees. Now, in the springtime, they mark our spring with beautiful pink blossoms. Now, due to the strong winds off the inner harbor, the blossoms don't last that long, no more than a few days or so. Now, continuing as we drive through James Bay, I'd like to talk a little bit about architecture. Victoria has a rich history of architects, and that began with a man by the name of Francis Rattenbury. Now, Francis Rattenbury was not a licensed architect, and he lied about his qualifications and experiences in order to win the contest to build the most notable building in Victoria, and that is the provincial legislature. In 1893, he was given a budget of $500,000 to complete the project. However, by its opening in 1898, that budget doubled to nearly $1 million. Now, as we drive by the legislature on the driver's side of the coach, you will see statues along the building, 14 to be exact, and they represent statues of people who formed our province as well as our community. Most notably, Captain George Vancouver. Now, his role was to find a new location for the Hudson's Bay Fort, originally in Vancouver, Washington, and that was due to the upcoming Oregon Treaty of 1848. Now, he charted Vancouver Island, and he chose this location as a place for the new fort. Officially, Fort Victoria was opened in 1843. Every evening, our provincial legislature is illuminated with 3,333 lights. Each light represents one jewel on Queen Victoria's crown. Now, as we make our way onto Government Street, named after its close proximity to the provincial legislature, it's hard to imagine this as a dusty dirt road of the 1800s. That's because this was the very first paved road west of the Rockies. Of course, it wasn't paved with asphalt back then, it was paved with cobblestone and wood. As a matter of fact, the original trolley tracks remain underneath the asphalt today. Now, as we approach Victoria's Inner Harbor, this will conclude your Aquila City tour for today. I'd like to thank you very much for taking our tour and allowing me to be part of your one-stop visit to Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. Before we depart the coach, please ensure you have all of your personal belongings with you, as we do have a very difficult time returning them to their original owners should we find them at the end of our tour. When you depart the bus, please use the handrails provided, and I will provide a stool for you there, and I will be there to provide any assistance as required. Please remain seated until the coach comes to a complete stop. Once again, thank you for taking the Aquila City tour today. My name is Rob. I do hope you enjoyed your tour, and please enjoy the rest of your vacation.